Hi, my name is Rachel Woods, and I'm doing my presentation over the differences in grass-fed versus grain-fed beef. So why did I choose this particular topic, you might ask? Well, I'm an animal science major, and I plan on attending OSU's College of Veterinary Medicine after I graduate. I'm applying there this fall. And I want to work on large and small animals, but my main interest is in the beef cattle industry. And my future plans include, once I get my own vet practice established, I would like to become a beef cattle producer in the industry. For my introduction, beef cattle are the most predominant livestock species in the United States. And 40% of the total beef intake consumed by Americans is in ground beef form. Ground beef is higher in total fat than most intact cuts of meat. It is also a very important source of the healthy monounsaturated fatty acid, oleic acid. There are two types of feeding practices in the beef industry, and that includes grasses or forages, and grain, or also known as concentrates. The type of feeding that is used by the farmer impacts production quality and nutrient composition of the beef. So the question at hand, the assumption is that grass-fed beef is healthier and better for you than grain-fed beef is. But how true is that? So my question is, which type of feeding practice is actually better in the long run? Or maybe neither practice is particularly better, but rather one is more desirable over the other under certain circumstances. So grass feeding. Grass feeding is very popular, but it's somewhat difficult to feed your cattle on grass in North America because there are select few regions that allow for grass feeding year-round. So a lot of our grass-fed beef actually comes from other countries that are more abundant in grass and can afford to feed their cattle on grass year-round. And some of these countries are like New Zealand and Australia. And people associate grass feeding with organic, but they're two totally different things. Forages are any edible, non-woody plant material other than separated grain, which can be grazed or harvested for feeding. Because of this confusion, back in 2006, the USDA's Ag Marketing Service proposed several standards for grass-fed marketing claims so people could tell what's actually grass-fed and what's labeled as organic. So two scientists by the name of Elswick and McNeil did a study on the fatty acid profile in grass-fed versus grain-fed beef. There was only one US-based study that reported a difference in cholesterol content, and it estimated a 21 milligram reduction in dietary cholesterol intake in the grass-fed beef versus the grain-fed beef. They found that forage feeding ultimately lowers total fat, and in both types of feeding, there are increases in antioxidants. However, in the grass-fed, the alpha tocopherol tripled and beta-carotene increased 1.5 to 10 times as much. They concluded that grass-fed beef is leaner than grain-fed beef. So, grain feeding. Grain feeding is easier than grass feeding because, as stated before, there aren't very many regions in North America that allow for grass feeding year-round. Grains include corn, grain sorghum, oats, and barley. There are several benefits of grain feeding. It lowers the cost of beef gains. It increases number of stocker cattle grazed per acre. It decreases the slaughter weight at which cattle have choice grade carcasses. It hastens marketing date of grazed cattle finished for slaughter, and it supplements pasture drought or seasons of low production. So another study was done by Cruz, Estos, and Russell on carcass characteristics and profitability. They did a study on 29 15-month-old Angus steers that were of similar traits. They found that grain-fed steers required less time to finish, and that grain-fed had greater final numbers in body weight, average daily gain, fat percent, back fat thickness, hot carcass weight, dressing percentage, kidney pelvic heart fat, longimus muscle, and retail yield. Grain-fed also had greater fat percent, but they had smaller muscling percent. They concluded that grain-fed beef was more muscly and fattier than the grass-fed beef. One study I found was done by some professors from OSU on the effects of starch versus fiber-based energy supplements. They did a study on 55 normal-weaned Angus steers. They did 4 treatments. One was 40% crude protein cottonseed meal. Another one was corn soybean meal at 1% body weight. Then they did whole soybean meal at 1% body weight, and dried distillers at 1% body weight. And they did 2 phases, winter and finishing. So in the winter grazing, they concluded that the ones on the corn supplement had greater average daily gain, a better proportion of mesenteric and omental fat, but there was a lack of difference of subcutaneous and intramuscular fat deposition. In the finishing phase, the supplement had no effect on body weight, average daily gain, or dry matter intake. There were no differences in hot carcass weight, dressing percent, 12th rib fatness, or longimus muscle, and they concluded that type of supplement did not influence the marbling score of the beef. In the animal science department at Texas A&M University, a study was done on the risk factors for cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes in men. And in their study, they found that grass-fed beef contains more omega-3 fatty acids. Grain-fed beef is lower in saturated and trans fat, and grain-fed is higher in oleic acid than grass-fed beef is. They concluded that neither is actually healthier or more nutritious than the other. So, in conclusion, beef cattle are very important in the United States, and so is the way we feed them. It is very important to know how to feed your livestock so that you get the best product that you can get out of them. Neither is necessarily healthier or more nutritious than the other, because they both have advantages and disadvantages over the other. Grass-fed beef yields a leaner product, while grain-fed beef yields a fatter product. So the answer to my question is that the type of product desired is the deciding factor in which type of feeding practice would be better. So if a farmer wants to produce a leaner product, he should feed his cattle on forages. Whereas if he would rather have a fatter product, he needs to feed his cattle on concentrates. And my references, thank you.